So we're going to take the opportunity to talk about a very important part of learning and understanding the world. But you've probably heard this term used quite a lot, and it's known as theory of mind. And it can sound a bit abstract or a bit complicated, but all theory of mind really is an individual's ability to attribute emotion, cognition, and perspective to themselves, but also to others. And for them to understand that their own emotions, cognition, and perspective may actually differ from other people's emotions and perspective and cognition. So a common example of where you can see an absence of theory of mind is this, it's kind of, a lot of people would attribute a young child's sort of like selfish nature as being, it's a lack of theory of mind. So, you come home and Tom has drawn all over the wall and he's had a fantastic time doing that. And then when Dad and Mum are really angry at Tom, he doesn't necessarily quite understand why at this stage in his development, because personally he's found it really, really enjoyable. So he doesn't get why Mum and Dad aren't also sharing this enjoyable experience with him. So this is a pretty normal in younger kids deficit. Like it's quite common to have a lack of theory of mind. And there are ways where you can start to teach theory of mind, and you can start to teach kids that just because you see something this way doesn't mean that everyone else sees it this way. Probably the simplest aspect of theory of mind to teach a child when you first begin focusing on this area is perspective taking. So it's a lot more quantifiable than emotion or cognition. It's what can you actually see. So a very simple way to teach a child that their perspective of the world is probably different to other people's perspective of the world can be delivered as so. So what you want to do is get some form of barrier divider. So you can see here I've got a clipboard, and on one side of the clipboard I've blue tacked on a cat, and on the other side of the clipboard I've blue tacked on an elephant. Now, you don't have to use the clipboard. You can just use a bit of paper with two different drawings on either side. You can cut a picture out, glue it on if you want. There's any number of ways you can do this. But what's important is that you have some sort of apparatus with two different pictures on it that you can turn around quite quickly and simply. Now, what's important about the images you use in this task with your child is that they both have to be images the child knows expressively. They should be able to label that as an elephant, and they should be able to label that as a cat. Now, when we first start teaching perspective taking to our child, we're simply going to start by showing one of the images to the child, and we're going to say, Shelda, what do you see?
Cat.
Great work, Shelda. Okay, I'm going to flip the board around now. Shelda, what do you see?
An elephant.
Now, that should be quite easy for your child if they're at the stage where they're ready to do this sort of theory of mind work. Now, this is where things are going to become drastically more difficult. So, I might say to Shelda, what can you see?
Elephant.
She sees the elephant. Now, the flip side of that is, what do I see? Now, initially your child is likely to get this wrong. And I'll talk about how we prompt that in a second. So I've once again presented Shelda the elephant. There's a cat on the back, which is what I can see. I can't see the elephant. So I say, Shelda, what do I see?
Elephant.
And that's going to be her natural response, because that's what she sees. She doesn't understand that I have a different perspective at this point. But we're going to try again. So it's like, no, I don't see the elephant. Shelda, what do I see?
Cat.
So in that situation, I'm making it really obvious to her that there's a different image on the back of the divider, almost to the point where I've kind of turned it around so it's a bit self-defeating. But as we continue to do this, I'm going to be able to limit that prompt a great deal. So if I just start off by saying, Shelda, what do you see? She says elephant. I say, Shelda, what do you see? She says cat. So she knows what two images are on this side of the board now. So if I say to her, and she's going to give me the correct response, Shelda, what do you see?
Cat.
And now she's seen that the elephant is on the back of the board the multiple times. I've prompted her as in like, what do I see? And you can actually prompt this by, particularly if you have a third-party prompter or someone else to help out at home, someone can, hand guide your child around the table so they can have your perspective, so they understand that just because they can see this side of the board, it doesn't mean this side of the board doesn't exist. But eventually when it's done well, it's going to look like Shelter. What do you see?
Cat.
What do I see?
Elephant.
Nice work. What do I see?
Cat.
What do you see?
Elephant.
And when it's done well, that's what it's going to look like. Don't worry if that takes a little while to develop. That's quite a high-level cognition there for your child to get to grips with. But that is really the first step to teaching a child about perspective taking, and it's a really easy way to start training theory of mind.